People with excessively loud exhaust on their car. Why, what are you trying to prove? They get off on people being annoyed by it or complaining. Essentially, they like saying you're a snowflake to people who are reasonable. What they fail to consider is that sound ordinances exist for reasons, from it physically harming wildlife like birds and deer and pets like dogs and cats to it physically harming humans. Many people have hearing issues, crippling tinnitus, use sensitive hearing aids, etc. Our neighbors have huge chugga-lugga earthquake engine whistle exhaust car fetishes, and they cause my girlfriend severe pain on a daily basis. I drive in manual mode or a manual standard transmission, and it helps immensely to be able to hear when to shift versus taking your eyes off the road to look at the RPMs, especially at higher speeds. Even more so with the top down. Plus, it really livens up the driving experience. People who are enthusiasts can tell the difference between a good-sounding loud exhaust and one that sounds like garbage. I understand it, all people are enthusiastic about cars, but for those who are, the sound from the driver's seat is amazing, and for those who appreciate it, a lot of snowflakes in here. Personally, I love the sound of a V8. I work in the auto trade, and I'm passionate about cars. Do I rip around every corner and have my car in race mode all the time? Absolutely not. I drive safely and normally about 99 of the time. The very rare times I put my car in race mode and tear up the road is always a brief moment. I'll slam the car up to some good speed and apply the brakes and get back to normal programming. There's no point having a sports or muscle car if you're not going to use its features. Why not? My cars are all loud 90 dB, but still get people telling me they're loud. But they all have better than factory cats, and the diesel has aftermarket DPF. Onto the diesel and my semi-track car, the loudness comes from a performance standpoint. It helps the engine perform better and helps with heat management. On the other, my daily, it's just 'cause I like it loud. Why do you assume that it put a bunch of time and effort and money just to prove something to others? I like it. I ran over a curb hours from home on a long road trip a couple months ago. It was easier to just have the muffler taken off instead of having it drag on the ground. Took it to a muffler shop when I had some free time. They didn't want to weld the muffler back on because the manifold flex was broke. Took it to a shop to have the manifold flex fixed, but the car is so rusty, they didn't want to touch anything. I gave up after that. I guess I'm just a loud car guy now. Far as I can tell, there's 3 types of people who have excessively loud cars. The poor people who have something wrong, like their cat got stolen and can't afford to fix. The enthusiast with their high flow exhaust and the sound is a byproduct. Last and least, there's the pseudo-enthusiast who is a bastardized mix of the first, to purposely destroys their exhaust to make it loud to try and sound like an enthusiast, and the look at me factor. Excessive is largely subjective. That said, the morons that have shit-ass coffee can mufflers are the prime culprits for what most of us would think of as excessive. The little kids in their Hondas and Subarus. Throw in some Euro trash for good measure. I like a little rumble to my exhaust, but I try to keep it respectful with a lower tone versus is splitting decibels a la the coffee cans. My car is really quiet and the stick shift, I stalled it a bunch before getting a slightly louder muffler. It's really not loud or obnoxious at all. Actually makes the car sound much better. I can't stand loud exhausts. Even when I raced motocross, I was the only one ever trying to find the quietest muffler when most kids are drilling theirs out and start fires in forests. I wonder this too, and somehow they want people to shit themselves. I was walking to work the other day, and some little boy in a shitbox BMW cruised past, revved the engine until the exhaust made that crackly banging noise, then roared off. I'm sure it was intentionally to scare people, because no one was impressed by his shitty Need for Speed fantasy. It sounds. It helps with performance, and it helps on the track to hear my RPM before I shift without having to look down at my gauge cluster at 130 miles per hour. Since wind knows that speed is deafening, couldn't care less if people pay attention to me. I don't rev it anywhere but the track. It's for my enjoyment and mine alone. I don't have one on my daily driver, but I have one on my VW Manx. It seems like you're not a car person, so don't expect you to understand this. But for car people, a lot of it is about the feedback, especially if we're talking a manual car or an older one. I love feeling the feedback of a car, and a large part of that is the sound. Where they go, or perhaps they're secretly auditioning for a role in the next Fast and Furious movie. Either way, it's like their car is shouting, "Look at me, I'm here, but hey." To each their own, even if it means the rest of us have to invest in earplugs. I have a modified exhaust on my BMW. In residential area I drive in economy or quiet modes. In the turnpike I open it up more. My straight pipe at about 20 horsepower. I have several other mods that add up to over 150 horsepower. It's a hobby of mine. It's not terribly loud, but for a regular car it's noticeable. This kid in my neighborhood has a car with that anti-lag backfire crap on it. Sounds like shotgun blast going off. Was walking my dog the other day and saw that his car had broke down, blew his transmission. I love every second of it and truly hope it happens to all these punks with their loud exhaust. Perhaps some individuals with excessively loud exhausts seek attention or validation, using the noise as a means to assert their presence or draw admiration. It could be a display of bravado or a desire to stand out in a crowd, reflecting a need for recognition or acceptance within their social circles. Can we add in people who make their wheels spin as they move off? The guy in the pickup who I saw recently do this at a junction chose to attempt it while turning sharp right from a standstill. Lost a deal of rubber off his probably expensive tires, fishtailed and nearly took out a bus shelter. What's excessively loud? And are you talking catbacks, straight piping, headers, muffler deletes, shitty tunes? These all cause various different levels of sound and volume. Or are you just another person who doesn't understand something, so it's got to be people out to prove some kind of point? I just like the way it sounds, and I try to be as respectful as I can with it. I do my best to not drive around early in the day or late at night. Or if I want to, I'll go to somewhere relatively secluded. I also like that other people that are into cars tend to like the way it sounds. Dude, I also didn't get it before. That after trauma drugs add big debt. D's slowly ruining my life. And I think this is because we don't see the whole picture. I'm in my thoughts, but I need something law, so I could stop thinking about everything at least on my way home. I think it sounds awesome. 360 dual straight piped out the back. She roars like a lion when I give her beans and I fucking love it. There is also a noticeable performance increase. My truck makes me happy. Get over it. I do not sit and rev my truck or hollies in one spot. My brother's car has a button to switch the valve open-close bypass, so he closes it when he gets near neighborhoods, or when it's later in the day, or early in the morning to not bother people too much. It's loud as fuck on the open mode, but it sounds so good'll. Basically that they can go around frightening and or annoying people, and that no one will stop them. Here is a scientific article about the issue. Study links preference for loud cars to some unsurprising personality traits. I just saw an article about this in some psychological blog I follow last night. Let me see if I can dig this up. BRB. Edit. Here it is. Study links preference for loud cars to some unsurprising personality traits. I've never had a loud exhaust or cared about the street car world at all. Loud exhausts are simply a power play, unless there's a mechanical reason for it. In this modern age, it seldom is unless the car is 20 years old and never maintained. I put a downpipe on to run a faster tune, but it removed 2 of the factory resonators, which I didn't realize would happen when I bought it. I've hated it ever since. I have a resonator sitting in a box to weld in, just need the time. Not trying to impress or prove anything. I like cars, and I like modifying them, and I like driving them. I'm not a fan of obnoxiously loud cars, but no, people might consider mine to be. I do stuff with my car not for others. It's just something they like. You can add anything people look for in a hobby and ask, why? I agree that this is more egregious though, since it affects other people to a large degree, which might be exactly why they like it. LOL. Just read an article about a study on this. It was found that the people who do this have high levels of psychopathy, sadism, and narcissism. They gain pleasure from breaking norms, scaring, hurting people, and getting attention. Adam Carolla broke it down many years ago. In short, the stupider people are, the more noise they make in every aspect of their lives. https www. I've always found this to be such an interesting assumption. People assume that if your car is loud, or if you accelerate quickly, that you're trying to look tough or something. People are allowed to like things that you don't. My truck is loud as fuck. Wanna know why? 'Cause I ain't paying to get it fixed. I'd what's wrong with the exhaust till it's stock and it'll rattle windows. I'm grandfathered into no emissions, so I'm not touching it. They really need everyone to know how cool they are. It's like with Holly riders, they think they're flexing, but everyone around just sees them as annoying jerks. Some people just can't read a crowd, I guess. It was the stock exhaust on my Brutal. I thought it was a little loud when I bought it, but I ended up being embarrassed by how loud it is when I kept starting it up in my neighborhood. I'm sorry. It's not excessively loud or idle, but it's probably a bit much at times. I bought it that way, and I like it the way it sounds. A quiet Corvette just doesn't seem right to me.